Hi everybody, I'm Skip Elsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show, where we watch old 16mm films and talk about them. I'm sorry that YouTube hasn't been sending out notifications. I've been adding a lot of stuff recently, recent transfers and stuff that's been kind of in a state of flux. But yeah. Anyways, we're back. And let's look at some reptiles. Enjoy.
About 150 million years ago, the most conspicuous animals on Earth were reptiles. Dinosaurs were reptiles. Dinosaurs and most of the other primitive reptiles vanished from the Earth because their bodies and ways of living were not suited to a changing world. Today, there are but few survivors. One of these, the Tuatara, is the only living member of a group of reptiles that lived long before the dinosaurs. The Tuatara can be found on only a few small islands off the coast of New Zealand. There, its last remaining representatives, about 10,000 in number, are protected by law. The four other kinds of living reptiles are the crocodilians, the turtles, the snakes, and the lizards. Although they do not look alike, reptiles are alike in 5 important ways. Some of these ways they share with other animals. Reptiles have backbones. They are cold-blooded. Their bodies are covered by scales. They breathe air with lungs. And except for a few lizards and snakes, they lay shelled eggs on land. Before animals began to lay eggs on land, the amphibian ancestors of reptiles had to lay their eggs in water, and frogs do today. In this way, they could develop without drying out. Shelled eggs contain their own pond of water and food for the developing embryo. An egg in a shell can be laid on land, and the young that comes out of the shell can live its entire life out of water. The first reptiles differed from the amphibians in a number of ways, including the reptile's ability to lay eggs with shells. Crocodiles and alligators are the largest living reptiles. One kind may be over 20 feet long. Crocodiles have narrow, pointed heads. Their powerful jaws contain many sharp teeth. Crocodiles sometimes attack human beings. Alligator heads are broad and flat. Alligators are not as dangerous as crocodiles. On both animals, the body scales are like heavy armor. Crocodilians have gone back to water to spend part of their lives. Even for an air-breathing animal, there are many advantages to living in water. In a cold-blooded animal, the body temperature is controlled by its surroundings. When it becomes too warm or too cool, it moves to a more comfortable spot. Tropical waters are usually warm. That's why they're a good place for crocodilians to live. In water, too, these clumsy reptiles can move more easily, and food is not difficult to find. This odd but familiar reptile is a box turtle. It moves on strong legs, carrying its heavy shell. No other land animal has a better protected body than the turtle. The hard outer shell is divided into an upper and lower part. Box turtles can withdraw completely into their shells when danger threatens. Turtles eat plants and animals. They have no teeth, so they tear their food with the sharp edges of their beaks. Some turtles spend all of their time on land, and some divide their time between land and water. One of these is the snapping turtle, whose powerful jaws make them dangerous to handle. Giant land turtles have shells that often measure 5 feet across. Some sea turtles are giants too, and may weigh up to 1,000 pounds. What change can you see in their legs? Snakes are the best known reptiles because they are found in so many places in the world. Except for their color and markings, snakes all look very much alike. They have long, narrow bodies and move without legs. The scales that cover the body are not slimy. Instead, they feel dry and cool, as they do on all reptiles. Most snakes are harmless, but the best rule is not to handle a snake until you are sure what kind it is. Poisonous snakes have fangs, which are hollow teeth that carry poison. This poison kills the animals they eat. Poisonous snakes, such as the coral, the water moccasin, and the rattlesnake, usually attack man only in self-defense or when suddenly surprised. Giant snakes may be from 12 to 30 feet long. They are not poisonous, but kill by squeezing their prey to death. There are more lizards than any other kind of reptiles. They may be small, like this 5-inch swift, or like this African monitor, 7 feet or more in length. Most lizards are 4-legged animals, and all have tapering tails. Each foot has 5 toes. Body scales may be rough, as on this collared lizard, or smooth and flat, as on this skink. Skinks can be recognized by their glossy appearance. All lizards, like all snakes, shed their skins. Although many lizards may look dangerous, only a few are harmful. One of these is the poisonous Gila monster of the southwestern United States. Another is its Mexican cousin. The Gila monster can be recognized by its bright colors, its bead-like scales, and its slow, clumsy walk. Another North American desert reptile is the horned lizard. Spines on its head and back help to protect it from enemies. When night falls, it burrows under the sand for warmth and further protection. You've probably seen this little lizard, commonly called the American chameleon, at circuses or pet shops. It can change color to match its background of leaves or branches. The bright-colored flap of skin on the male animal is used for display during courtship. This head, with eyes that can turn independently of each other, belongs to the true chameleon of Africa. It doesn't have to work hard for a living. By just sitting still, it can gather in a meal of insects with its sticky, fast-shooting tongue. The story of reptiles is an important part of the study of life on Earth. Reptiles have been here for over 300 million years. That's 300 times longer than man. Now their way of life is threatened because man is rapidly changing the remaining natural Earth to his needs. What must we do to save part of the original wilderness landscape? What can we do for reptiles and other animals so they will not be lost forever like the dinosaurs?
Reptiles. We have our own way of pronouncing things here on AV Geeks. Proteans, reptiles. What are some of the other things? I have a list here. Abdomen. Puma. Rutabaga. Ovulation. Montana. Membrane. Gemini, ethanol. Those are some of the things. So behind me we got a film scanner set up. We've got a bunch of films, almost 200 films from the Oregon Archive that we've been scanning so far this week, and this is one of them. This is Gift of Green. Enjoy.
It's a green world we live in, and lucky we are that it is. Yet how few of us realize the significance of the plants which make it green. In this color of nature, symbol of youth and growth, the green plants from lowly grass to lofty trees hold the key to life on Earth. The beauty of this green world we take for granted. The pine trees of northern woods, the wind-shaped cypresses, the giant forests of snow-clad western slopes, the bright, lush growth of warmer places, tropic lands, in kind and number endless. Trees to give beauty, trees to bear fruit, trees to shelter and shade. How much we owe to the trees, to all green plants, large and small. Green plants, green leaves such as these, through a wonder-working substance they contain, trap and store the energy of the sun for man's use. Without the green plants, we could not live. By a process peculiar to themselves, they build within themselves something vital to all existence. For this process, two building materials are needed. One is water. The water particle, or molecule, contains 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 of oxygen. The other building material is air. Not all parts of the air, but only colorless, invisible carbon dioxide, of which the air contains hardly more than a trace. We are all familiar with carbon dioxide. It is the gas returned to the air when animals breathe and when fuels burn. The carbon dioxide molecule contains 1 atom of carbon and 2 of oxygen. Oxygen, as a free element, makes it possible for us to breathe. We cannot see oxygen in the air, but if we expose a water plant to sunlight, oxygen given off by the plant rises to the surface in bubbles. Oxygen, however, is not one of the plant's building materials, but a byproduct of its work. If we cut off the sunlight, the bubbles slow down and stop. Without the sun, this activity ends. Most plants have tiny hair-like rootlets, difficult to see when a plant is pulled from the ground. But when seeds are germinated in a covered dish, these delicate white hairs are easily visible. These root hairs, here greatly magnified, are important to the life of plants. Through them, water is drawn from the soil and into the root. Through the root and up the stem, the water passes into the veins of the green leaf. A greatly enlarged view of the leaf's underside reveals part of its intricate structure. Here among the epidermal cells are minute openings or pores called stomata. There are thousands of these stomata in 1 square inch of leaf surface. Now let's look inside the leaf. Exposed to direct sunlight is the upper skin, or epidermis. Under this transparent surface is a layer of cells like palisades. In this palisade layer is concentrated most of the leaf's green coloring matter. The small green bodies here faintly seen are called chloroplasts. Under the palisade layer is a spongy storage layer just above the lower epidermis. Here we see in cross-section a stoma or pore. Through thousands of such pores, air, with its particles of carbon dioxide gas, enters the plant and makes its way into every living cell. Through these same pores, part of the water drawn from the soil escapes into the air. Enough water is retained, however, to permeate every cell of the leaf. The carbon dioxide and the water finally reach the living chloroplasts. Here they are, many, many molecules of carbon dioxide and of water inside a chloroplast. Here, too, is the key to an everyday wonder. It is called chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is what makes plants green. Chlorophyll has the power to trap the sunlight and harness its life-giving energy. Sunlight, air, water, and chlorophyll. With these, the plant's work is performed. The process is called photosynthesis, meaning putting together or building with the aid of light. More oxygen is produced by the process than is used by the plant. This oxygen is returned to the air and is the oxygen we breathe, without which we would die of suffocation. And what is built from these simple materials? Something not at all simple. By complex chemical reactions, the plant makes a complicated molecule, and bound in this molecule is the energy of the sun. This complex molecule, formed of simpler molecules joined together, represents a food, a direct source of energy for living things. It takes an infinite number of molecules precisely arranged to make just one crystal of this food, common sugar. This crystal is sucrose, though other sugars, glucose and fructose, were probably made first in the plant. What happens to the sugars which the green plants make? The sun's energy contained in this food is required first of all for the plant's growth, for the formation of new parts. The growth of a fern, the opening of flowers, processes covering days in nature, demonstrate the energy plants derive from the food they make. Some of this energy is used by the plant to build its architectural structure, like the veins which hold up the broad, thin surface of a leaf. The woody trunk of a tree supports the crown of leaves and branches. Some of the plant sugar is converted into starch, cellulose, and lignin. Many vegetables store converted sugar as starch, chemically a close relative of sugar. In some plants, sugar, after undergoing chemical changes, is stored as fats or oils. The coconut palm stores in its seed an oil used in foods, in soaps, and various other products. The edible fruit of the olive tree is rich in oil, and so is the avocado. The plant sugar combines with nitrogen, phosphorus, and other minerals from the soil to produce the important proteins. Peas and beans are excellent sources of plant proteins. Other combinations derived from sugar give man his vitamins. Not only the well-known leafy vegetables, but fruits are important natural sources of vitamins. By other transformations, plant sugar goes to form many useful drugs. From cinchona bark comes quinine. Among the other drugs which come from plants are digitalis, belladonna, and strychnine. And still other things may happen, for the plant is an able chemist. The color and fragrance of flowers are made in the plant from sugars. The banana of the tropics and warmer subtropics, which takes the place of bread and potatoes in the native diet, is rich in sugars. The pineapple, too, has a high sugar content. Of the 350,000 known kinds of plants, man places chief reliance on only two, the sugar cane and the sugar beet, for the sugar he directly consumes. Sugar cane thrives in the warm, humid climate of tropical and subtropical areas. Its cultivation dates back centuries before the time of Christ, and Columbus introduced it to the New World. The sugar formed in the leaves is stored in the stalk of the cane. Sugar beets are grown in virtually all countries which have a temperate climate. In the beet, the sugar formed in the leaves is stored in the long white root. Trains and trucks bring the beets from field to factory, where sugar is extracted from them. The food which the green plants make is their direct source of energy. It enables grasses to grow tall as trees, like the bamboos. In some countries, they attain a height of more than 100 feet. The strange saguaro, the giant cactus of the Arizona desert, in the place of leaves which give off water, has developed in its trunk organs to store water. Having no leaves, this adaptable plant makes its food in the tough skin. Like the saguaro, the smaller cacti grow sharp spines. These spines protect them from animals which would eat them for the moisture they store. The energy of some plants is sufficient to move rocks. And this energy can be destructive to other plants. The strangling fig, wrapping itself around the great live oak, may finally kill the older tree. The wood of these great trees is derived from the sugars made in the leaves. This food, then, is a building material as well as a source of energy. It was a building material for the oldest and largest of living things, the giant sequoias of California, 4,000 years old and more, and 300 feet high. Here, reconstructed with great skill, are the remains of animals which lived in past ages, many millions of years ago, long before man inhabited the earth. As animals live from plants today, these prehistoric monsters, too, derived their sustenance from plants. Then, as today, even the carnivorous animals, eating the flesh of other animals which lived on plants, in the last analysis, were dependent on the plants for their food. And here, embedded in rock, are the fossils of plants which lived in those remote ages. These prehistoric plants were once green and made their own food, the basic food of nature, just as the green plants do today. But they are more than relics of past ages. From such plant remains, buried in the earth for millions of years, come the world's sources of industrial power. Coal is one of these sources of energy. Coal is a fossil fuel found in the Earth's crust and formed of plants that lived ages ago. Petroleum is the other source. Oil in the earth originated from plants and animals, and, like coal, it represents the energy from the sun, stored in sugars made by green plants which grew millions and millions of years ago. This stored energy is set free when coal and oil burn. Man uses it to drive his great industries. To heat his buildings. To light his world at night. To power his locomotion by land. By sea. By air. All of this, the power of our complex age, we owe to the green plants. Green plants and what they do with water and air in the sunlight. Green leaves and the wonder worker in them, the sun-trapped chlorophyll. The sun's energy caught and fixed in a gleaming sugar crystal. The green plant's gift to the living world. Food of nature. Food of man. Source of his development and power through the ages.
Nice, beautiful color on that that film. All right, so I'm on a conference call with the folks at Apple Shop. I'm on their advisory board, talking about how we can help them with the materials that were flooded. And so, in the meantime, here's an interesting film made by Brigham Young University about the search for truth. And it's fascinating to put it in the context of thinking that this is a Mormon film, Church of Latter-day Saints, and it's about science, and it's about discovery and astronomy and cosmology. Enjoy.
And the Lord God said, Worlds without number have I created, and by the Son I created them, which is mine only begotten. And as one earth shall pass away, and the heavens thereof, even so shall another come. And there is no end to my works. Far in the distant past, before time was, you and I and every person who has ever lived upon the earth dwelt in the presence of our Heavenly Father. There we grew in intelligence, saw worlds organized and peopled with kindred spirits. There we longed and prayed for the time when we could come to our own earth and take upon ourselves mortal bodies and be tried and tested in all things. And there stood one among them that was like unto God, and he said unto those who were with him, We will go down, for there is space there, and we will make an earth whereon these may dwell. And we will prove them herewith to see if they will do all things whatsoever the Lord their God shall command them. So somewhere amidst the galaxies and the stars, our solar system was organized, drifting on the edge of the great Milky Way like puffs of dust in the vast oceans of space. A sun and 9 known planets. One of these planets was our Earth, a place where man could struggle and grow and seek for truth. Sir Isaac Newton, great physicist of the 17th century, had many arguments with an agnostic friend on whether the universe came about by chance or whether it came about by special creation. The story is told that one day...
Dr. Newton, I have great news. The Paris Academy of Science has accepted my paper. I've been invited to read it at the Sorbonne.
My congratulations.
Thank you, Sir Isaac. Now tell me, what have you been doing since we last met? Or is it a secret?
Oh, I have no secrets from you, my friend. Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't been making much progress in my experiments in the nature of light.
Why, what have we here?
It's a model of our solar system.
How very interesting.
Go on, turn it. It's perfectly harmless.
How very ingenious. Why, this is the most marvelous demonstration of our solar system I've ever seen. Schoolboy would understand this. Where did you get it? Who made it?
Nobody made it.
I'm serious. Where did you get this? It's extremely clever.
I'm serious too. This material just came together and assembled itself quite by chance.
Of course you're not serious, Dr. Newton. You and I know that the chance formation of such a thing is a physical impossibility.
At last, I've captured you in a web of your own making. See here. My friend, you admired this simple model I've made. Yes, I admit, I was its creator. This thing is a puny imitation of a much grander system with which you are already familiar.
You mean our universe?
Yes. Do you still think that this great universe, and this world of ours and everything in it, came about by chance? For every effect, there's a cause. To conceive this universe in all its marvelous detail required a cause, an intelligence, if you wish, which understood and compared the quantities of matter in the sun and planets, and understood the gravitating force between the sun and planets. Now, to adjust all this so delicately in such a marvelous variety of positions argues the original cause to be not blind and fortuitous, but extremely well skilled in mechanics and geometry. I like to think of this cause as God.
And today, too, men do not believe that order ever comes of itself. It takes intelligence to make and assemble the parts of an automobile, not to mention the miracle of the conception, birth, and organization of the extremely complex human body. This leads us directly to the same age-old controversy which confronts young people today, just as it did Newton. Did life on earth come about by orderly creation, as the revelations of God declare? Or did life come into being spontaneously by the chance meeting of elementary particles, and without a guiding intelligence, as put forth by some skeptics? This theory has become very widespread, but a majority of scientists are now firmly convinced that creation was directed by an intelligent being. For instance, Cressy Morrison, prominent scientific reporter, has given us an illustration which suggests this premise. Suppose that you put 10 pennies, marked from 1 to 10, in a piggy bank. Now try to get them out in sequence from 1 to 10, putting back the coin each time and shaking them all over again. Mathematically, your chance of getting out the one marked number 1 the first time is 1 in 10. The chances of shaking out 1 and 2 in succession are 1 in 100. The chances of shaking out 1, 2, and 3 in succession are 1 in 1,000, and so on. Your chances of shaking out all 10 numbers in succession would reach the unbelievable figure of 1 in 10 billion. Think of it. 1 in 10 billion. By the same reasoning, there are so many exacting conditions necessary for life to exist on this planet that they could not possibly have come into the proper relationship by undirected chance. For instance, as Morrison also points out, the Earth rotates on its axis at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, producing our days and nights of 24 hours. If the Earth rotated at only 100 miles per hour, our days and nights would be 10 times longer than they are now. During the day, the sun would likely burn up our vegetation, while during the long night, anything not destroyed by the sun would freeze. Again, the sun has a surface temperature of 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and our Earth is just far enough away so that its fire warms us just enough, and yet not too much. Could that be by chance? If the sun gave off only 1/2 its present radiation, we would freeze. If it gave off half as much more radiation, we would roast. The Earth is tilted 23 degrees, and this gives us our seasons. Was this also by chance? And another thing, if our moon, instead of its actual distance of 238,000 miles, were only 50,000 miles from the Earth, the tides of the ocean would be so enormous that twice a day all of the continents would be submerged. Even the mountains would soon be eroded away. It is apparent from these and other examples that there is not one chance in billions that life on our planet is accidental. Dr. Edwin Conklin, Princeton University biologist, has compared the probability of the Earth being created by chance to that of the unabridged dictionary resulting from an explosion in a printing shop.
Anyone for Scrabble?
Many scientists of the 19th century were misled by certain of their observations, and as a result came to conclusions which were atheistic. But now even the most pragmatic materialist, in the face of present-day scientific knowledge, is led to the inevitable conclusion that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. The first great principle of science is that all nature is orderly in its behavior, and that it operates under a series of eternal, unchanging laws. Man has been able to duplicate some of the components of a simple cell, but even under the most favorably controlled laboratory conditions, a cell has never been observed to spontaneously come alive. In fact, if even the most simple cell in existence dies, we are still unable to bring it back to life. It's unimportant to know in exact detail how the earth and its life were created, for the Lord did it by means only dimly guessed by man as yet. But the important thing to know is that God is the Creator, and that He lives and is interested in us, and this we may know. Most scientists today agree on this one great truth: there is a God. Listen to Dr. Armin J. Hill, Dean of Physical and Engineering Sciences at Brigham Young University, as he gives the views of world-renowned scientists on this subject.
Acceptance of new information as it becomes available is the true scientific approach. When added knowledge points to new conclusions, a true scientist never hesitates to discard the old theory. In our world of research, it is to be expected that researchers will change their views and their conclusions as they develop new knowledge. It is no disgrace to change one's mind. By changing with newly acquired knowledge, science is able to advance. Dr. William F. G. Swan, international scientist and lecturer, bears this out when he says, "The man of science likes to separate fact from speculation. Now viewing the universe as a whole, I cannot escape the fact that it is of intelligent design. The universe shows, on a magnificent scale, the same kind of interrelationship of its working and planning as an engineer strives to achieve in his own understandings. It is not so much the failure to comprehend the universe which fills the man of science with awe, but rather the fact that in what he does understand, he sees a plan, not only akin to his own way of doing things, but one conceived with enormous cleverness. And so the man of science, conscious to some extent of how the thing is done, is much more impressed by the intelligent design of the universe than would be the unscientific man of past ages. A marvelous thing about the universe is the apparent simplicity of its fundamental design. It is the simplicity of the perfect genius. There are less than 100 different kinds of atoms composing the variety of forms of matter known to our everyday experience. But even these are built according to a common plan out of but relatively few kinds of fundamental particles, principal of which are only 3 different kinds: the electron, the proton, and the neutron. The laws governing the activities of these particles are relatively simple to the scientist, and yet out of these laws is fashioned all of the richness of nature. It is because of these laws of the universe, the laws of these fundamental particles, that we have light and mechanisms in our eyes to make use of it. It is because of them that we have been able to invent radar, later to find that the bat had used the same principle from time immemorial to enable him to fly with safety at night. It is because of these laws that the marvelous interrelation of organisms represented by our own bodies has become a reality. Now may I add my own observation that in the contacts I have had with many of the great scientists of this day, I have found most of them to be humble, sincere men, with attitudes which are closely in harmony with those I have quoted here. Also, may I say that all I have observed in nature, all I have studied in the fields of science, has strengthened my own profound conviction that God lives, and that what we see and experience as the physical world is his handiwork.
The director of the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center at Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Werner von Braun, one of the world's foremost space authorities, expresses himself this way.
Today, more than ever before, our survival, yours and mine and our children's, depends on our adherence to ethical principles. Ethics alone will decide whether atomic energy will be an earthly blessing or the source of mankind's utter destruction. Where does the desire for ethical action come from? What makes us want to be ethical? I believe there are two forces which move us. One is belief in a last judgment, when every one of us has to account for what he did with God's great gift of life on the earth. The other is belief in an immortal soul, a soul which will cherish the award or suffer the penalty decreed in a final judgment. Belief in God and in immortality thus gives us the moral strength and the ethical guidance we need for virtually every action in our daily lives. In our modern world, many people seem to feel that science has somehow made such religious ideas untimely or old-fashioned. But I think science has a real surprise for the skeptics. Science, for instance, tells us that nothing in nature, not even the tiniest particle, can disappear without a trace. Think about that for a moment. Once you do, your thoughts about life will never be the same. Science has found that nothing can disappear without a trace. Nature does not know extinction. All it knows is transformation. Now, if God applies this fundamental principle to the most minute and insignificant parts of his universe, doesn't it make sense to assume that he applies it also to the masterpiece of his creation, the human soul? I think it does. And everything science has taught me and continues to teach me strengthens my belief in the continuity of our spiritual existence after death. Nothing can disappear without a trace.
Another eminent man of science, Dr. Harvey Fletcher, father of stereophonic sound, former director of physical research at Bell Laboratories, and professor emeritus at Brigham Young University, adds his testimony.
I myself have a firm belief that God lives and that life has purpose for each one of us living here upon earth. I did not obtain that faith through scientific reasoning, but rather through spiritual experiences which are hard to explain to others, but nevertheless are very real. It's been my experience that a great many men of science believe in God. True religion never hesitates to be held up for investigation by men of science. Such men as Michael Faraday, Louis Pasteur, James Clerk Maxwell, Robert A. Millikan, Michael Pupin, all believed in God. Let me read to you the testimony of Michael Pupin. At the time this was written, he was president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Professor Pupin said, "The real purpose of science is not merely to make material things, inventions to increase wealth and comfort. If science does not help to give me and others a better faith to live by, a better understanding of the Creator, a closer relationship to God, so that I can carry out the divine purpose, then science is a failure. The soul of man is the highest product of God's creative handiwork. Now, after God had spent untold time in creating man and endowing him with a soul, Is it reasonable to suppose that man lives here on earth for a brief span and then is extinguished by death? That the soul perishes with the physical body? That it existed in vain? There's a growing tendency in this age to think that as one becomes mature, one must throw off a belief in God, just as one discards his belief in Santa Claus. Just where would such a position leave us? We would be forced then to admit that this beautiful world of ours was not the product of design and planning, but of mere undirected chance. That your dearest friend is simply a jumble of atoms and molecules that just happened to land together to make a dear and loving personality. I feel certain that in our quest for the mysteries of the physical universe, that the Lord will guide and direct us into new scientific findings. I also feel certain that if we search for a testimony with the same vigor and energy, that we will find that too. I have.
Likewise, Dr. Henry Eyring, Dean of the Graduate School at the University of Utah, and recently elected National President of the American Chemical Society, says,
"There is no doubt in my mind that God lives. I have had no serious difficulty in reconciling the truths of science with the truths of religion. Moreover, God has instilled in us a desire to search after the truth. I'm thankful that I belong to a church whose doctrines can be subjected to every test. I recall the advice my father gave me as I left to study my freshman year at the University of Arizona.
Jeff, you look just as pretty as a picture, I'll tell you. That's there. This mane straighten out a bit. That's there.
Say, Dad,
Huh?
isn't it about time?
Well, let's see. That afternoon train leaves Pima about 5:30. We've still got a few minutes. Oh, you're going to Tucson to study science, huh? Well, now you're going to hear some things up there that don't jibe exactly with what you've learned in Sunday school, but don't worry about it. Just keep an open mind, and truth will eventually work its way to the surface. I don't worry about how much you learn. Study all the science you can. And if you'll remember your prayers and don't be profane, and live in such a way that you'll feel comfortable in the company of good people, then Mother and I will feel good about your going. And don't you worry about the gospel, son. It'll stand the test of all truth.
I appreciate what you're telling me, Dad, but let's not miss that train.
Well, see you later, Jeff. Seems like nowadays these young folks are always in a hurry. Well, come on, son. If it's speed you want, I'll show you how to make this Ford really rattle. Crank it up. Once more. There you've got it. Come on, boy. Make that train.
The Lord has instilled a desire to search for truth, that truth which my father mentioned, into our very beings. Man, in his ceaseless search for truth, has discovered and partially explored 6 different worlds. The first of these, that wonderful, practical, everyday world in which we live. A world in which things are measured in feet and inches, seconds and hours and days. Then we have a second world, the world of the biologist, a world that is microscopic, where cells are usually about a 10,000th of an inch across and may divide every few minutes. Next, we delve into the chemical world of molecules and atoms, where the atoms complete their vibrations in 100 million millionths of a second. Inside the nucleus of the atom, we enter a fourth world, a world where things are happening millions of times faster still. There is also a fifth world that we are beginning to know, a world of vast distances, where astronomers measure the revolutions of the planets in years, and where the unit of distance used for measurement, the light year, is about 6 million miles in length. And finally, there is the spiritual world, where time is measured in eternities and space is limitless. Thus, in our minds, we can travel from the almost infinitesimally small to the infinitely large. Now, curiously enough, there are good people who would have you believe that man, who understands all these wonderful things and masters them in part, is no more than the dust of the earth to which his body returns. To me, this is inconceivable. Today, the increasing effort to understand man's place in the grand scheme of things proceeds at an accelerated pace. The answer to this problem won't all be found in the laboratory, because many of the most important answers to the question, where did I come from, what am I doing here, and where am I going after death, will be found in the realm of the spiritual. And I don't think many scientists today would presume to say a thing may not be simply because they do not understand it, nor would they deny the validity of spiritual experiences of others because they have been without such experiences themselves. Just as science has proven a help to religion, so religion in its finest expression has given impetus to science. There is no end to the progress of a man who seeks for truth. Death is not the end. It is but one more step in the great forward march made possible by the redemption of the Savior. Of this I am convinced.
Fascinating film, so fascinating to see the view of Western science and how it was a bunch of dudes. Somebody pointed out a bunch of dudes with facial hair, but then it just kind of continues on, and lots of assumptions being made and lots of things that conveniently fit into religious views. And from this, on a Christian level, this is where intelligent design came from, where you have scientists who decide who decided that at some point it was, there was all this thing that happened as far as nature and creatures and all this, but at some point there's no explanation and it's just God. Yeah, God just made it. It was some intelligent designer that made this. We're going to stop looking, and not like most scientists who say well, we don't know yet. We're still finding out. We're still researching. So anyways, interesting stuff. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll be back again tomorrow. If you like what you saw, you can hit the thumbs up. You can hit the like. You can get us some coffee at ko-fi.com/avgeeks, or patreon.com/avgeeks is another way to contribute financially to us. And then also YouTube has made this little button below the comments, which is a super thanks button, and you can donate there too. And I see that people can do it even when the show isn't live, so that's very much appreciated for those of you who are watching this later. Thanks. This money goes towards buying things like brand new cans to put some of the films in that are in rusted cans. Rust is really not very good for the films. When it gets airtight, it starts to deteriorate. So we're always buying new supplies and always doing new things. So thank you for that. And we also buy coffee too, because we love it. Join us tomorrow, where we will show you more films. And as always, please rewind and love each other, and love yourself. Smiley face with mascara. Everybody take care, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.